So for our interview today, I'll be asking a series of questions about your experience with disability activism in Utah. We have an hour for our interview, so feel free to share stories in as much detail as you can remember. And Donna, it's nice to have you here with us. First off, I'm noticing you're running a little behind schedule today. So can you talk to me about the challenges of timeliness, being on time, and what are some of the obstacles for disabled people?
Okay. Well, first off, I had scheduled the cab, but UCAB has only two accessible cabs for wheelchairs, and then they were running behind because the person ahead of me was running about 30 minutes over at the doctor's office.
So this wasn't a matter of like you woke up late or your alarm didn't go off. This was quite literally your form of transportation did not arrive.
No, it didn't. But I got here and we got it worked out when I get picked up, and so going back home should be a lot easier. And then I used the Via out in Riverton, and I had an incident the other day.
Can you first tell me what VIA is?
It's the UTA vans in the Riverton area, and it's only a 5-mile radius they go. And it's only $250. Jump in and get over to an appointment and get back. So it's really cheap. And it works good. The only problem is that the straps that they have pull out, they hook onto the bottom of your chair. I had a cab and it didn't work. Neither strap worked. So I wasn't tied down to anything. Well, he took the turn too fast, and my chair did almost a 360, even though I had it off.
Wow.
And it rolled in the back of the van. So
So
that was interesting.
the power chairs can be put in neutral so they roll, correct?
Well, I had it off,
You had it all the way off and locked.
and it went so fast, it like boom. So I got him as a driver again yesterday, and I'm like, okay, the hooks that come out aren't working, so I don't want to be thrown around. So we pulled off to the side of the road, and he could hook something here on the back, and it kept me in place better.
That's good. So
And he drove slower.
how frequently would you say these kinds of transportation barriers crop up in your day-to-day life?
Probably not every day, because I can use my wheelchair and roll across the street to get to the grocery store. Just when I have to go to a doctor's appointment up the U, then I use UCAB, and that's very expensive. And also, the Via only has that 5-mile radius, so you can't get to the Walmart. It's not quite close enough, so.
So to get to our regular interview questions, how long have you been involved in disability activism in Utah?
Oh my gosh. Whew. Okay, I worked for IHC at the Beneficial Life Tower, and I would do Meals on Wheels during my lunch hour, and that was, 30 years ago or better. And then from there, I got involved with my blind friend, and then I would go up to the Capitol when they're in session, and we would send in notes, talk to our legislatures and senators
Okay.
all the time.
And then what years were you involved with or familiar with DRAC's work in Utah? What was the time frame for you?
I'd have to say maybe as much as between 10 and 15 years ago. And it was just, at that time, I was just taking my friend to the meetings because I was her transportation, so.
And is this the blind friend you were referring to?
Yes,
Okay.
Leslie Gersh.
How
God
did
rest her
you-
soul. She's no longer with us.
I'm sorry. How did you and Leslie hear about DRAC?
Through the LCPD, Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities, and sometimes they would have people up there when they were in session and when in our meetings, and just through the time with Leslie and also her friend Cordy, who was deafblind, so you got hooked up with the Sorensen Center, and one thing leads to another.
So as someone who worked within the disability rights movement for a while, you've likely encountered a variety of different disability groups. You mentioned the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities. These groups all have different approaches to social change. What do you remember about how and why you got involved with DRAC in the first place? Or what was it about the organization? Well, I guess we've kind of talked about that was interesting to you. In the 50s.
To see what that's all about, to learn, and get more involved.
What did you find different about DRAC than other groups like Legislative Coalition?
Well, when this first started out, my first memories of DRAC were, protests and handcuff yourselves to the railing. So I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of a little much. I'm not really take that approach. I just do the letter and have meetings, set up times to meet with senators and representatives, like when I used to be part of Nickel, and we would go and meet, and that seemed to work really good.
And that's the National Council for Independent Living, correct, Nickel? Thank you. Can you briefly describe, so you mentioned that DRAC we used direct action tactics. Can you tell us the process leading up to a direct action? What does it take before you actually handcuff yourself to a building? What are the steps you try to take if you see an issue of accessibility?
Well, first off, we'll submit a letter and wait for a response, and then sometimes it takes 2 letters, and then action takes place after that.
Okay, so if there's no response to the letter, then you step up tactics. Understood, thank you. So during the era you were involved, are there particular events that really stand out to you as noteworthy?
Well, when Barbara was here, and when we met at the hotel and we rode up to the Capitol, and went up there and had a rally behind the Capitol. And back then I was driving, and so I was kind of at the tail, and if anybody, their chair died or something, because I could put two chairs if necessary in my van, or 3 people, because it was really hot that day when we did that.
And what was that event?
We just, we were rallying to get, sorry, I don't remember exactly what that was.
Yeah. What are some of the different kind of street theater tactics, or do you remember any of the details of some of those actions?
I'm sorry, I don't.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's see. So we were talking about the Capitol rallies that you'd go to
Yeah.
outside. How frequently do you recall being involved in rallies like that?
Well, we did that one, and most of the time when they were in session, we make appointments and meet and discuss what we needed to have changed or recommendations.
And how was drag received by the by different legislature members?
It was, I think it was received better when it wasn't the radical, when you took a more diplomatic approach. And I know that's not always what DRAC wants to do, but that's what I feel like.
So, do you recall specific legislators that you particularly worked well with, or that partnered well with DRAC, or other partner organizations?
Senator Romney, and oh my gosh,
Are you talking about current senators?
yeah.
Senator Lee?
Lee isn't our biggest fan. I can tell you that right now. He used to be my senator when I lived up there in Woods Cross, so yeah, he's not our fan at all. Todd Weiler is a state senator, and Christensen, sorry, I'm drawing a blank on all the names.
Let's see. So, for you preferred the in-person interviews with different senators and whatnot.
Yes.
Did you ever attend any of the national actions out in DC or other states?
We were, because when we were at Nickel and DC, and just in the marches, the 9-block march, and we were just chanting, freedom now, and just would go forward. Sorry, I'm really drawing a blank on all kinds of things.
You're totally fine. So you did go out to the DC
Oh yeah,
marches?
I've been to DC twice.
Okay.
It was a long time ago.
And out in DC, how did you find accessibility on those marches?
It worked really good for me. But when I was there, I wasn't in a chair. I was on foot, so I was able to walk.
And do you know roughly how long you'd march?
9 city blocks.
9 city blocks. Okay. So at that time in DC, it was a combination. Can you describe to me the types of events you did? Was it a combination of meeting with legislators and also doing direct action?
Meeting with legislators.
Okay, that's what you remember the most clearly?
Yes.
Okay. What are some of the issues that were important at that time?
Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare, and making sure we get eligibility for those things.
And have you seen significant change happen as a direct result of DRAC's involvement?
Everything's in slow pieces. Every year we have to redo it and redo it and redo it. But we keep trying and we keep going. So our, little celebrations, you enjoyed those, and you're always re-educating representatives and senators every time there's an election. And it's an ongoing thing. We have to educate all the time.
So, what other areas of education do you feel are important that affect people with disabilities?
Well, this is going back a ways, but it's probably still going on now. Like if you had a special needs child, and this happened with my son because he was ADD, and they put him in the resource class. And that was a complete waste of his time because the school system, it's mainly your troublemakers are in those classes. And that was hard and didn't do any good for my son. And so I ended up putting my son in the Utah Boys Ranch for 6 months. And to get him caught back up, and then got him home, and now he's doing very well, and he's highly intelligent, and he's functional intelligent.
And what years was he going through the school system? Was this pre or post ADA?
Post.
Okay, so this is after the ADA?
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little about what it's like to work within the movement, where so many members have so many different disabilities and dramatically different life experiences. What are some of those divisions, and what are the emotions when those things come up? How do we address disabilities across the spectrum is what I guess I'd like to know.
Well, I think first off, we have to let them know that we listen to them, and they can have a safe space to bring up their concerns. And if needed, it's in a confidential space. And we have to just be respectful of what they're trying to tell us, and if we don't understand it, then we need to ask, can you help me understand or explain it to me?
And what is the common thread that brings different disability groups together? Is there something that unites across different disabilities?
I think it's we are all entitled to have the same rights as everybody else.
And then, sorry, I just drew a blank on what I wanted to ask you.
That's okay.
So for you personally, you've been involved in the disability community for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen things change in that time from when you first joined?
Well, we're getting more accessible access, just like the curb cuts for people, and then the timing of the lights when you cross the street.
That's a disability issue?
Yeah, well, because they were changing too quick and the person couldn't get across. And so back in the day, we timed it. Walking, I did this when we were walking, and we did it again when I was in a chair. Okay. And so there were changes made to the lights downtown, right by the library, I do believe.
What are other barriers you think people with disabilities face that maybe society is not aware of?
I think they don't always understand what it takes to get what all the parts, like for myself, like with moving. And I have a sister, and she had no idea. She thought she knew. My daughter doesn't always understand what it takes. But some people don't want to have the time to understand what it takes. And it just takes being patient and explaining what you need to have done.
Are you seeing any change in society with attitudes toward people with disabilities? Has it improved? Are there areas where it needs improvement?
I think it's improving slowly but surely. Yeah.
Can you think of any specific examples? Take your time.
Let's see. I can't think of any right off the top of my head right now.
That's absolutely fine. So you mentioned throughout your work with disability, there were times when you were not in the chair, but you were still disabled at that time, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what are the different access needs that somebody with a mobility disability that does have some mobility, how does that change from access for somebody that uses a wheelchair?
Well, your transportation changes completely. From driving your own vehicle, and then you don't drive anymore, and then you've got to get access, for different things, and to get around. So whether it's a cab service, and UCAB only has 2 accessible vans, and we're keep hoping there'll be more. But then if you use paratransit, and that's all good and fine, but you're at the mercy. So if you go to the doctors, to what used to maybe taking you only an hour or 2, when I could drive, then using that, and to when it ends up being an all-day event because of how the scheduling is with the paratransit.
So can this be a barrier to other areas, to work schedules, things like that?
Yeah.
Does this affect people's ability to work and live independently?
Oh, yeah. It can.
And DRAC was very involved in the early days of establishing accessibility with our public transit system. What changes have you seen made in that area?
Personally, very little.
Really?
In my opinion. I mean, UTA could, they got the front runner and tracks, but that's only on one side of the valley.
So you're saying there's a geographical barrier that is not being addressed?
Well, if it is, it's slow. And they're just hitting the high points, like out to the airport. And then, it's gone further south. But there's only so many stops when you go up north, if you're on the front runner. And then the places where you wait to pick up the front runner or tracks, and they're not, if the weather's bad, there's no place to stay under a cover or something.
Were you involved in DRAC when any of the bus crawl-ons were occurring, or when they were blocking the tracks lines?
No.
No, you were never involved in that aspect?
No.
Okay. Just curious. So since the passage of the ADA, what particular things have changed in your personal life? Have you seen access improve? Are there specific examples of areas where you didn't have access and the ADA helped gain more access?
Not where I'm at, because I count on the cab to get me where I need to go, and for me it's a money issue of paying for things. So, and I'll be terrible, I don't ride buses.
Why is that?
I have no desire to ride a bus. No desire to ride a bus.
Okay.
And even when I lived in Woods Cross, there was only a bus only came twice on the main 800 West there, and I'm like, and then it would just shoot you downtown. But I'm like, I just don't want to know another. Let me deal with getting where I'm going the way I do it. And
Right. So for you, it's about choice and having control over the way that you get places.
yeah.
Once you are at a store, at a doctor's office, at a school, any of these facilities, are there access features once you're inside that you face?
Yeah, when you, like at the doctor's, the room will be too small. We have to move chairs out of the way. And if the doctor needs you to get on the table or whatnot, and, it takes a few people to move me because I can't walk, so, and that's really always interesting.
And do they have special training at doctor's offices for dealing with that, or do you feel that that's an area?
I'm always planning on teaching them as I go.
So there's really no process put
No.
in place?
Unless they've had experience.
And this
of
is in the
another.
healthcare industry that
I know.
should...
They should know. But, they're not there, and, and you need strong people to do things, to move you, and it helps when my former doctor, she had a sister who had MS, and so she knew, and then there was another doctor in there, and she had a brother that had cerebral palsy, and so between the two female doctors there, they were pretty good about knowing how to maneuver, and so was some of the staff. So
Awesome.
you just train them as you go.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about our founder, Barbara Toomer. What can you remember about her? What are some of the favorite stories you have of Barbara?
Oh, she was always front and center, and she had been doing this for a really long time, and I was always in awe of her energy and her motivation. She was, to me, one of a kind, but she was strong leader for DRAC and ADAPT. And I visited her at her house, and that was very moving. And she'd been in the service herself, I do believe, and just talking, and she has all this pictures of where she'd been and different kind of actions, pictures of actions, and it was very, very interesting. You couldn't ask for a nicer person, who was really straight up. She wasn't going to take crap from anybody, but she got a lot done.
I think one of her nicknames at Actions was, didn't they call her Sarge at ADAPT or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's true. She could do really good things. She'll be forever missed.
I have to agree with you there. I really do. What was her leadership style like then? We mentioned she was very tough. Her nickname was Sarge, but as a leader, how did you feel under her?
Let's see. I felt motivated.
Yeah.
Yeah. She could really get you excited and like, okay, we're gonna do this. Yeah, so.
So are there other areas or topics that we haven't touched on today that you really want to talk about? Experiences through your life that you'd like to share?
I just really wish that that people could just get in our place just once, trade places with us and just know, or get in a wheelchair and see what it's like to go.
So empathy.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're allowed to cry. I understand that.
I hate to cry.
I'm there with you.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And I know I'm very grateful to everybody that can help me every day. And I feel for all those that don't have the help that they need, or they don't have a place to live, or having such a hard time finding a accessible place to live around here.
Is that what motivates you to do this work?
Part of it, and it's like, might not be able to get a date in Utah, but you might as well advocate. That's the way I look at it.
What are your hopes for the future of the disability rights movement? What would you like to see moving forward?
I would like to see more affordable housing for everyone. I mean, I know what I pay to live at an assisted living, and I know so many people out there would ever be able to afford this. And all the things that aren't allowed in an assisted living versus what you could really use to make your life a little easier. But then find somewhere where that is. And it's just really, really hard.
So you have both lived independently in your own home.
Yeah, for 35 years.
And you have also lived in assisted living. Can you talk about some of the differences in those positions? Why is it important to have community-based care?
Well, and to have people that are there that are trained. I mean, I really feel very fortunate because where I'm at the Beehive home out there in Riverton, it's a smaller one, and I can't imagine people that are living in multiple stories, and the cost. And I see what I pay, and I see what these new 55 and above are paying. I'm like, so like to know where these rich people are, because it sure in hell ain't here. You know, yeah, because I spent $50,000 for a year there, and that makes my money go really quick. And so I'm at this one only because they let me have my dog. And my dog's very important to me, and I wasn't going to move out of my house until I could find somewhere where I could take my dog. And that was a big chore for my sister to find all these different places, and we went and looked at different places, but you get in, you look at them, they're not always accessible when, you know, and some don't want a chair, and then you get in there and the furniture, they think they're doing really good things, and
It's not accessible.
not accessible. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to share at this point?
Well, besides I've bald, and we don't want to be.
No, I love it. I love that you got vulnerable. I think it's an important.
Oh yeah, I can do that, but
So how has DRAC changed your outlook on having a disability? Final question.
I think I like the new look we're doing
Yeah.
versus how it used to be. I'm more excited about the changes that we made, and new leadership, and with you, Sarah, and an awesome executive director, Carolyn. She can move mountains. She's really good. And yeah. And we're getting more and more people to come onto the board, which that excites me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Any final comments?
Nope. I'm just happy to be here, and yeah.
Thank you.